I never told you all I wanted to say. Now it's too late to hold you, 'cause you've flown away, so far away.
Never had I imagined living without your smile, feeling and knowing you hear me, it keeps me alive. And I know you're shining down on me from heaven, like so many friends we've lost along the way. And I know eventually we'll be together once we're good.
Darling, I never showed you. Assumed you'd always be there. And I took your presence for granted. All right. Hey, good evening. Good evening. I don't know what I'm looking at. Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Mike and Wendy, y'all. And we are in the Marriage Shop. Welcome. Good to see you all here on, or to be seen at least on this Monday evening.
Yeah, known to many today by Mamba Monday.
Is that right?
I think that's a thing. That's what's trending today.
Okay.
Hi, Jasmine and Lisa, Rocco and Tracy. Hey. Thanks for joining us early, you guys. I'm glad you could be here with us again this week.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it or try to get around it. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you've been outside or even if you've been inside and turned on anything, picked up a telephone, then you can't help but get around the conversation around what happened to Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 other passengers on a helicopter yesterday morning, the 26th of January. And so they passed away as that helicopter crashed. And I think that it stunned a lot of people, the reverberation around the world. I mean, and you knew it was going to be big, but I think that the impact has surprised a lot of people. And I think sometimes, and the impact is even surprised like individuals, like how they reacted to that. And I was somewhat, I don't know, taken aback, surprised by my own sense of loss around that. And I spent the last day reflecting on why that is, or why that was, right? And so, and there are a number of reasons for that, I think. But as I've listened to people all day, everybody kind of has their own sense of why that is. Some people, for some people, it's as if Kobe Bryant was their own family.
Yeah.
And some people just don't care that much, and they're frustrated even.
That there's as much coverage as there is?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it is, I think it's probably appropriate to, first of all, when stuff like this happens, and things like this rarely happen in terms of that magnitude, but I think it's important to kind of deal with that a little bit and not try to gloss over as if it didn't happen.
Right.
And so, because I think there's things that we can take from almost anything, certainly this, but I don't know. So, I mean, how did you respond to that when you heard that news?
I was in a meeting, and so it was kind of a surprise. So I was sitting in a meeting. We were discussing the business at hand. And then the person sitting next to me hands me his phone. And I read the headline, and my initial response was, is this real? How many times have you seen something come across Facebook or other media platform where they're saying somebody famous has died, and then it turns out to be a hoax? And so I think that was my immediate initial response. But then once it was confirmed, there was this incredible sense of loss. I'm a sports fan. But even being a sports fan, even if I wasn't a sports fan, you can easily relate to, he's 41 years old. His 13-year-old daughter was with him. There were other people. Even if you didn't know him, the tragedy in and of itself is enough to just kind of cause you to pause. And that was my initial reaction. Yeah. What was yours?
Well, it was kind of the same as yours. I think I got the first message, and Morgan and I were actually sitting in the driveway about to drive off to rehearsal or something. And I showed it to her, and I'm like, it's got to be a hoax. I said, get on with your people and find the truth. And so we're going down the road, and she's just kind of looking, and I'm flipping radio stations. And ultimately you discover that it's actually not a hoax, right? But I think when the TMZ site crashed, she was like, aha, I see, they took it down. I'm like, no, I think that's probably volume because people want to know. But not a hoax. And so as that's kind of settling in and I'm reacting, I had to think to myself, what is really going on? And so upon reflection, I'm kind of thinking about it, and I'm like, okay. And I told you, I actually fully expected to have a conversation with him at one point about some things. Right?
Yes.
We're going to set that up. But it was, there was an interesting trajectory. He was a little bit younger than we are, right? But he comes along right around the first year that I come into the Army. Yeah. Interestingly, right? And so I'm coming in, he retired actually the same year I retired. Yeah. And so our careers kind of tracked along. So he's elevating, he's kind of on top of the world, and then crash, right? The fall from grace, everybody knows that. Right. Interestingly, same year, same and if you've ever heard the whole story, same time. Yeah. Fall, right? Yeah. And so there's the clawing back part of that whole thing and trying to rebuild and reestablish. And I remember kind of looking on TV, and his wife would be there at some of those games, and I'm kind of looking at the body language and their body language, trying to do the impossible, which is gauge what is going on with you, because it's a little rough over here, right? Yeah. Or it's getting better over here. And so over the course of the years, though, they continue to build this family and to build this legacy and to build this thing. And so, and then boom, over. And so immediately I thought, man, what if I only had until this moment? Have I done enough? Have I, it calls you, and I really reflect it in that way. Right. When a celebrity passes away, but there's something about that dude that, and this is just totally, not my doing, but in the lab, when we graduate from graduate school, every one of us in Neil Grunberg's lab, there's kind of a number, and our number corresponds with the order that you graduated, basically, right? And so you know what my number is, right?
Yep, 23.
24.
Oh. I thought it was 23. No, I think 24. I get that wrong every time. It's 24.
I was going to be 23, and then a new person came into our lab. Yes. Right? Yes. And then so I ended up being 24, which is a little interesting.
Yes. So now Jordan, interesting.
Kobe, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so and the fact that he kind of left basketball and got into a number of things that had zero to do with basketball. I love that because, it's kind of like I left and no government work for me. Yeah. But anyway, there's some similarities, and we'll tend to do that with people. But so I think there's things that we can learn and reflect on at times like this, when everybody is kind of focused on that tragedy and that loss and just the suddenness of how quickly life can be gone.
Yeah. So how did it impact you when you heard the news yesterday, either yesterday morning, the evening, or even last night or this morning, because it's really been, on the front page and front lines of all media outlets. How did it impact you, if it did impact you, share that with us, and with the others that are on this. Xavier Lucky Sr., always good to see you. John Ford, I know you're always traveling. Glad you could join us tonight. Jeff Hill, Tasha Jones, glad you guys could be here. And Michelle Moore Wilson, is always great to have you on.
Always.
Yeah, but how did this affect you all? Often when tragedy strikes, death in particular in our families, whether it's your family, close friends, close to you, it almost always triggers a response to reflect, right? It stops us in our tracks. Many of us stops us in our tracks, and we go into this reflection, right? When it's close to our age, who we look like you said, your career paths, those types of things, it really causes you to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm not too far removed from that person. And I think inevitably the narrative is that could have been me. So how did it affect you all? Please share that. So John Ford says, not guaranteed tomorrow. I say it all the time. Yeah. Thank you, John, for sharing that. And so what were you going to say? What can you take from this?
Well, I think it's important to kind of, there's these other pieces, right, that make it really impactful, because, not only one child, but 3 children involved.
Yeah.
My greatest nightmare, right? I mean, I have many nightmare scenarios, but I was telling you earlier, my greatest nightmare is that something is happening to one of my children, and I'm not there to help them, to save them, to protect them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A close second is I am there. Something's happening that I can't control, and I can't protect them. Yeah. So this is the ultimate nightmare scenario. Right. And so now I recognize too that we don't control anything, and God, and this is when we, I talk about a lot when Sydney left to drive, she went around and drove by herself for the first time. I was going to follow her. Yeah. And I paused, and why is it that story is about to get me? But I paused, and it was just like God saying, no, just stand still. I got her. Yeah. You got to trust me.
Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to do at any point. We joke about to have an empty nest. Yeah. And I kind of vacillate back and forth. It really is bittersweet. Yeah. Right. True. We are called to actually let them go, but letting them go is one of the most difficult things to do. Yeah. Whether it's that first day that you're taking them to daycare, kindergarten, graduating from high school, college, giving them away during their wedding, or the unfortunate circumstance of losing a child. None of that is easy. But certainly when it comes to talking about death and the impact that it has on us, the finality of it, I think is what really grips us. You don't have a second chance or another chance to do something different. Yeah. And so let me go. Hey, Jody Hammenberg, thanks for joining us. And Dylan Brown, thanks for joining us. So Lisa McNeil says, it felt like a hole opened up in my chest, especially when they confirmed his daughter has passed too. It was empathy in part. I instantly started praying for his wife. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. Rosalind Brown, thanks for joining us. So if you're just joining us for the first time, we're Mike and Wendy Perry inside the Marriage Shop. And we're talking about what we can learn, or what can be learned from this tragedy with the Bryant family, Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gigi, who died along with 7 other people in that helicopter crash yesterday, that we all learned about. And for us, we feel a personal responsibility to talk about what's right in front of us. It's easy to just kind of skip right over that and get to something else and then move on, but we will move on with our lives soon enough. In this moment and today, it's important to just kind of reflect and pull out some things that that may resonate with you as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and tonight, I don't know. Geraldine Mack. Hello, Geraldine Mack. Welcome. And we not, I don't, we're not going to drag it out at night. We'll take however long it takes.
Yeah.
But we're not going to drag it out. But some people, and so I think there are several things that we can learn. The first thing I think I want to talk about, though, is important, because some people would say, you are, and I've heard some people say, basically, you didn't even know this person, and why you are, why respond, why care, or why even have an emotional reaction to that.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a humanity, right? This connection to humanity means that there are some common things and some things that are going to affect us, some things that possibly even should impact us if we have this connection. There's this commonality of experience that we have. If you look at your life and you describe your life to somebody, you will find that your life is not really that different than theirs, right? Mm-hmm. The things they care about, the things that they fear, the things that they want for their lives, the struggles they have, interpersonal, all that stuff. There's like all these similarities, right? Because the human experience is a common one. And so when something happens to someone, there's some things that are going to strike us emotionally, right? Mm-hmm. If you ever, now, and I'm a Laker fan, right? So, but so if you ever like jump out of your chair and run around the room, as I have during the playoffs, or going to Laker games back in the day, watching Kobe and Shaq in San Antonio with Sydney. About, how old was Sydney? 7 weeks old?
Maybe 7 weeks.
We're going to say 7 because 5 would sound bad, right? Yeah. Whatever she was. Yeah. She was a little one, right? And so if you ever like scream to the top of your lungs, like when they're winning and when there's this celebration, then you're probably going to mourn too. Yeah. Because emotion is a two-way street. You don't get to like choose one and that's all. And so I think that's important as we deal with any people, right? That there's this commonality of experience that we have. So we celebrate together, we mourn together, we fear the same things, we want the same things. And so there's that common connection. But I think because some people will, well, what does that have to do exactly with marriage? Well, I think that time is a huge factor here. Yeah. The second lesson I think we can learn.
So what was the first one?
Is that there's a connection that we have to all humanity. Yeah. Right. Okay. That's kind of the first point. I don't know if I said it explicitly that way. Yeah. But I think there's a connection that we have to all humanity, and so we feel when others feel, right? And we go through things with people by just watching. I think that's pretty amazing. That just watching somebody, you can be happy if you watched a couple propose or a soldier come back from overseas and the reunion.
Those videos always get me.
Right? Yeah. When you see other people hurting, you hurt. Right. Yeah. So, and
I think reality TV has also, it taps into that, right? Because it grabs us where we're most vulnerable, right? So like I was saying earlier, the things that we identify with, when you see those things being played out, the closer they are, or the more similar they are to you, the more real it is. And so I think one of the reasons why reality TV is so addictive is because we honestly form a connection with these people that we may never meet, but we are sharing their experiences, or we believe or feel that we're sharing their experiences. And I think that's what you're getting to, is a shared and common experience.
Yeah. It's for sure. And so you relate to what you see, right? Yeah. But this second one, this idea of time, is really important, right? Time, is fleeting. It is nonstop. Time will not stop. Yes. And so we spend a lot of time, y'all, on what somebody did yesterday, week before, years before. We spend a lot of time worrying about what we did, how we did it. We spend a lot of time worried about what's going to happen next. How am I going to do whatever? And I'm not sure if. And we spend a lot of time just worrying or mad or holding on to things, right? I get to holding on to things. But how do you spend these minutes, right? Because when it's done, it's just done. And so I don't want to be all totally doom and gloom, but how do we tend to spend our time in marriage? I mean, we spend a lot of time rehashing old conversations. We spend a lot of time, planning, financial planning and trip planning and school planning and career planning, and just the list kind of goes on and on and on and on. How much time do you spend, like, I don't know, living in this moment and experiencing that moment, like truly experiencing it?
Right.
So one might argue, and this may be a poor argument at this time, social media. How much time do we spend in that device, on that TV? So yeah, we might even be sitting there together and watching television. That's cool. But what are we not saying? What opportunities are we missing? I'm not sure, right? But I think it's important to recognize that the minutes that we spend, each one is valuable, right? And I don't know if we always really appreciate how valuable those moments are. And so something like this, and this is like really, really tragic in a major way, right? But I think sometimes it takes something like that to kind of shake us a little bit, to say, hey, you know what, time's passing. Like right now, what are you doing right now? When was the last time you spoke to your wife? Or have you been holding a grudge since last Thursday or Friday? Right? When's the last time you grabbed your husband's hand? Are you holding a grudge for something that happened on the weekend?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, being arrested is what comes to mind. And I think and Victoria Cape Off Mom Wilson, glad you could join us, and thank you for what you posted this week. The marriage is something that we can immediately reflect on, and that's essentially what we're here to talk about. But it's also losing a child. Nothing really reminds you how fast time goes, as quickly as watching your child grow. And going back to look at when they were infants or babies, and as they grew, how quickly and how fleeting that time is. And so, you bring up a good point. We waste a lot of time. And, we talk to people a lot about being present or in the moment. But that's a difficult thing to do when you have so many things that are competing for your attention. And so we get it. I mean, we can keep saying, hey, prioritize this, and what is most important to you, and are you spending the most time on what's most important? Yeah, those are all questions that we all have to answer. But at the same time, it is, hey, it's difficult to really at every moment be completely present in that moment. So how do you put everything else off to focus on what's important? How do you do that in terms of time? How do you make the most of the time that you have?
Well, I mean, it is, well, first of all, I mean, it's such a huge question. All right. And so, and maybe they'll see this, maybe they won't. There's a couple this weekend in an argument about multitasking. You remember that? We were just watching it. We decided not to even mess with that. But, the argument was about whether or not you could truly multitask. Because his point was, well, you can really only do one thing at a time. I read this thing that said so. And she was like, well, no, I mean, I do like 5 or 6. What about this? What about that? He was like, yeah. The truth is, well, let's put it like this. The research tells us that actually you can only do one thing at a time. Wow. Right? No, like one, right? You can only attend to one thing. Some people shift, they can switch channels really quickly and move from one task or one set of tasks to another quite quickly, right? But if you think about your computer is actually doing, and you coders out there, you computer people, whatever you call yourselves, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, right? But your computer is actually processing like one thing at a time, like super fast. And so it is, I mean, it's our brain is kind of that way. We can attend to something, one thing at a time, right? But some people are good at juggling, and it is juggling. Juggling, you're not holding everything at the same time, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of that. So if you want to really maximize that moment, I think the first thing is to make your life a little bit less complex.
Simplify.
And so first decide, I'm going to give this thing my full attention because it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not worth it, well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Why is it even on the list?
Why is it a thing? Right?
Yeah.
And so the easiest way, the way that I try to do that was with the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when they walk into the room, well, that's hard to miss and it's hard to ignore
Mm-hmm.
our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, I need to do better at giving them that time. So instead of staying at my desk, I pushed back and I started kind of, even sometimes I like get up and come to a different part of the office, even like back in here, and just sit down and talk to them so that everything around me, those screens and
Mm-hmm.
the phone, nothing was in my immediate vicinity, so I could attend to them, because you're human. It's going to be hard sometimes.
Yeah. And
right?
It's more difficult if you're a procrastinator, because then you have the pressure of having to get something done in a condensed amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but if you happen to be a procrastinator or you're challenged with prioritizing, then it is more difficult to really focus on each thing
Mm-hmm.
individually, because you have a looming pressure or a looming responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, when we try to multitask, it is competing for our focus. It's about what gets your focused attention, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
Not necessarily what you're doing, because somebody can say, I can drive and listen to the radio and talk on the phone at the same time. And the truth is, while you may be doing those things simultaneously, only one of those things is getting your full focus.
Well, I would suggest none of them is getting your full focus. Right?
Yeah, none or one.
And so it's right. And
mm-hmm.
there's some things it just doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
Right. But you need to know what does matter, because don't expect that you can just be on and sharp and dialed in all the time. Not realistic. Yeah. So you need to know when it counts.
Yeah.
So when it counts, you need to kind of push out distractions and get in there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, the other thing is, when depending on what your lifestyle is, if you have, because this came up, I listened to a podcast earlier last
mm-hmm.
week, about having a child with special needs, for mm-hmm. example.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a child with special needs, or that has an illness, or your husband or wife comes down with an illness, then your attentiveness during that time is different, mm-hmm. right? There's a need mm-hmm. that's present at that time.
Right.
So we have a tendency to respond to whatever that immediate need is, just another way of looking at that. But if you're not sick and there's nothing going on, then we have a tendency to be sometimes dismissive.
Yeah.
It's not an emergency, and as a nurse, all the time when my kids would say that they didn't feel well, right? I would have to go, it was almost like a triage process. I would go through my list. Are you bleeding? Do you have a fever? Did you vomit? All of those things. If none of those things was the case, then you're okay. And I can get to you in a minute.
That's
or,
funny.
You can fix this with a Band-Aid
mm-hmm.
or whatever. And we tend to do that with a lot of things. We filter it through.
We do
kind of in a way we triage.
That's funny. Yeah, we do that with each other.
So Kim Aiken, Jessica Jones, Gloria Hamilton, Rebecca Bruni. I'm so glad you were able to catch us at 7 this week. Are we gonna?
Do you want to? Are we
mm-hmm.
gonna go back to?
Yeah. Did I say Gloria Hamilton?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
So Victoria Wilson says, "Wow, a less complex life. Needed to hear that in this exact moment." Amen. Mm-hmm. Jeff Hill, thanks for joining us. Xavier Lucky Sr. We just really take for granted that we will always have a tomorrow to get things right. Truth be told, we should have done things that we should have done in that day.
In that moment.
Well said,
sure.
well stated.
Mm-hmm.
And then Victoria says, I am possibly the most distracted person in this part of the world. So thanks for your honesty and transparency.
And apparently your observation that clearly there's always somebody that's more distracted. They're on the other side of the world.
Other side of the world.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And so, so time, right?
Mm-hmm.
This moment, which I believe feeds directly into the third point. So the first point, about what all this can teach us maybe is that we have a connection to humanity. a common experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's going to compel us to feel in certain cases. Time. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Time. It just keeps moving, right?
Yeah.
The third, though, is family and forgiveness. I know there's two, but whatever. Sue me. Family and forgiveness, right? These people, right, that we are here in life with and doing life with and living life with, and the ones that we're supposed to love better, right, unconditionally, and that we're supposed to forgive and all that, and yet we often don't, and we hold on. And it's funny because a lot of people, and I've heard people say this, and I see a lot on TV as well, and they always say things like, man, if I just had one more minute, one more chance. Well, why would you get one more minute and one more chance when you wasted the ones you had?
Yeah, that's deep.
Think about that.
It's deep.
I mean, that family member that borrows money from you all the time, and they go blow it on booze or shoes or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man, can I get $5 more? You're like, well, what do you do with the money I gave you?
Oh, wow. You kind of went in right there.
I did. Yeah. Sorry. It's too much. Is that too much?
No, it's not too much. I think it's a good way of looking at it. Camilla Freeman, I'm so glad you could join us tonight.
Sorry you put me in military mode.
We've been inviting you for for a while. So if you're just joining us for the first time, and some of you guys that came in after we got started, we're Mike and Wendy in the Marriage Shop, and tonight we're talking about what we can learn from the Kobe Bryant and Gigi Bryant and helicopter crash tragedy. And so Mike was talking about connection to humanity and how that has impacted many of us, even if we didn't know Kobe personally. And then time. And, I'll ask you, what are you doing with your time? And are the things that are most important to you the things that you spend the most time on? And then you just said family and forgiveness, love and holding grudges. Yes.
Yeah. Showing love, letting go of the grudges.
Yeah.
And not putting yourself in a position where it's like, man, if I had one more chance, if I had one more minute, because if you can hear us right now, then you have that minute, like right now.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And so some of you know a little bit of my story. Some of you know that both of my parents actually died relatively young. My mother died when I was 23. And then my dad died several years later, but still back in 2004. Yeah. And, when people lose their parents, they tend to say that a lot. I was so used to that early morning phone call, for example, or every holiday, my dad would be the first one to call. So my mother would call me first thing in the morning, even though I worked night shift. And that was always tough because it would be like right when I was about to get into some good sleep, the phone would ring, but I knew it was my mother that was calling. Yeah. And so it was always okay and I could go back to sleep. My dad called on every holiday and he was the first one to call. So you miss those calls. And so then it's like, oh my goodness, I could complain that she was keeping me from sleeping, but then you miss it. That's real. And that's what we feel. But until you experience that, it's that whole, well, I know what you're going through. Or, when people try to express that, and it has positioned me to really kind of sit in the place of saying to people unapologetically, you're wasting time. Why are you complaining about your mother or your father, or why are you complaining about your children? It's so easy to one day have everything in your world stable and in an instant lose it all. Yeah. And I think that when this helicopter crashed and we heard the news, as quickly as that spread, there's something that changes. So when you hear that, it changes you. And as much as you could say, I wish I had another opportunity, you're exactly right. What are you doing with the time that you have? Yeah.
That's good. I don't even really know if anything else needs to be said.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys have to say? Because we started out asking you all about how this affected or impacted you, or if it has, and what did you learn from it? I heard today that there was an interview with Kobe, I think on ESPN, and one of the things that he said is that he wanted his memory or legacy to be that he never wasted a moment.
Yeah.
And I think that if there's, maybe we could end on that, but if there's anything that you should take from this, would your legacy be that you would not want to be known for wasting important moments or minutes or time, that when you had time, you didn't use it wisely. When someone wanted some of your time, someone that you love or a family member wanted some of your time, were you more inclined to blow them off or dismiss them, or did you stop what you were doing to give them the attention that they were seeking? And as it pertains to marriage, how often do we dismiss our husband or wife because of something that happened? Like you said, you got on my nerves, or you've been getting on my nerves. So now I'm not trying to hear what you're saying. I know that you're not going anywhere. So I'm going to continue to treat you as if I know that you're not going anywhere. So I cannot talk to you. I can be mean to you. I can hold a grudge and I can hold out because you're not going anywhere, when that's not really how we're called to live.
No. What we're called to live is to be in this constant state of love and forgiveness, trying to close the gaps, right? Because there will often be things in there trying to drive you apart. And our job is to close the gap and to not be complacent, but to do things to keep that gap closed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's time, whatever it is. And I know just because the percentages, man, I know somebody's looking at this right now and you've been like stuck on something, holding that something. Let it go. Truly, it's like, let it go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a decision. And we each get to make that decision every day that we're alive. And while we can reflect on the people that we've lost, we also should reflect on the fact that we're not promised the next minute or another day. Yes.
And I also want to just say too, that like this particular incident is high profile, but there are people that are hurting around us all the time.
Yes.
Right. Every single day, all around us. And so try not to forget about people, really. And because part of getting through life is the relationships that we have with each other. Right. So I don't know. So I just think that's important to note.
Yeah. And Camilla and John, thank you for sharing about your parents that you've lost. Tamisha Kinlock Carter, thank you for joining us. And Calvin Rowland, I know you got tagged in this, so I'm glad you joined us. He says, it really reminded me of how important prayer is for your family before you send them out into the world. Anything can happen to any of us at any moment. I pray for my wife every morning before we leave each other in the morning and before we lay down at night. And then Tamisha came back and said what you said, let it go. Yeah. So thank you for reminding us that to pray, to cover each other. It's something that takes seconds.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's what we want to encourage you all to do. Hey, the challenge tonight is, even if you don't normally do it, maybe pray together tonight. Yeah.
I think that's great. We did a vision board event last weekend, Saturday.
At London and Cheryl Dubois' house. Shout out to London and Cheryl Dubois.
They did an amazing job, and we enjoyed that. Coming together on one accord. But one of the couples, the seasoned couples, shared that they had always prayed, for each other, but they had not prayed together. And I thought that was great that they shared that. There's a different move and a different feeling when you pray together. For sure. Gloria Hamilton says, what I learned or saw from this is that it's not that important. Nothing is important enough to jeopardize your family.
Nope.
All
Nothing.
right.
Even though that little point feels real important when it's happening, right? So, so yeah, that's it. I think, and that's a sudden halt, huh? So, hey, marriage shot, y'all.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you all for sharing with us tonight. I know it's a little bit different than what we normally talk about, but like I said, we both felt it's too important to ignore. We always want to remind you to, as we said last week, keep the main thing the main thing. And in this case, your relationship with each other, your relationship with the Lord is the main thing. And so we always want to encourage you in that any way that we can. Before we pray and let us leave tonight, we did want to remind you we have some events coming up. This Thursday, if you know any newlyweds out there, you can send them to Facebook. There's an event coming up on Thursday from 6 to 8. We'll be doing a sort of a marriage mini TED Talk at the dearly beloved luxury bridal experience bridal expo. That sounds
fancy.
Yeah, that's on Thursday from 6 to 8 at Pine Knoll Farms. You can register. It's open to the public. I think it's $5 per person.
Yeah, $5.
But we will, as a couple, we'll be talking to brides to be about what's the most important thing as they plan their weddings.
Sex.
Right? No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't
Keeping
a question.
The most important thing, important thing, their mindset.
I'm sorry. That's what I meant.
We're not talking about sex on
My bad.
Thursday.
We're not?
No.
Yeah.
And okay. So that's this Thursday, January the 30th. February the 14th, 6 to 10 p.m. at the DoubleTree. We'll be doing the Love Connection event put on by Gardner Grove Baptist Church. You can contact the Stokes. They still have tickets available for that. That's STOWASH, STOWASH03 for more information, or
I'm gonna put that
Thomas
in here.
Stokes on Facebook.
Say that again. I'm gonna put that in here.
STOWASH03 That is the Love Connection. It is a marriage event from 6 to 10 at the DoubleTree. That's in Augusta if you're in the area. And then February 28th through March 1st, Mike and I will be doing our first Weekend to Remember marriage weekend for family life, and that'll be in Myrtle Beach. And then the 1st of May through the 3rd of May, we'll be doing our second one in Atlanta. The reason why I bring those up tonight is because tonight is the last night that you can register for half off.
Oh, is it this last? It's the 20th. That's right.
It ends tonight. 27. Okay. So if you are trying to attend one of those weekends to remember, or any of them, not just the ones we're going to be at, tonight is the last night for you to register and get and be eligible for half off the registration cost. And you can find that at familylife.com. They're also on Facebook at Family Life. But we encourage you to attend, not just if your marriage is in trouble, but if you just want to get away to get together or come together. And so I think those are all of the announcements. Again, we want to reach out to you, ask you to continue to keep us in prayer, join our prayer team as we prepare so that God can use us in a way that will bless others and marriages and families long after we're gone. So we thank you again for joining us this Monday. So that's a lot.
You did that well. I appreciate that. So yeah, let's go. Let's pray, y'all. Heavenly Father, we just come to you tonight, just thanking you for being God, thanking you for your divine wisdom and your grace, and with the understanding, that you really control it all, Lord. So we don't always understand why things happen or why they happen when they happen. But the one assurance that we have is that you are always there watching over us, and that everything works out according to your perfect will and your plan. So we ask that you just help us to do our part to live in that plan. We ask that you bless every relationship, every marriage, everyone that hears this. If they are hard hearts, Lord, help them to soften, and help them remember that the grace and the forgiveness and the kindness that you showed us, so that we can continue to show that to each other. So we thank you tonight. We love you, and we continue to trust you with everything. We pray these and other blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So
Have a blessed week, you guys.
Yeah, and we're gonna close out. We came in with a song. It's a cover of a song I really like, and so we just want to send this out to anybody who's lost somebody. This is for you. So.
Sorry, I never told you all I wanted to say. Now it's too late to hold you, 'cause you've flown away, so far away.
Never had I imagined living without your smile, feeling and knowing you hear me, it keeps me alive, and I know you're shining down on me from heaven, like so many friends we've lost along the way, and I know eventually we'll be together once we're good.
Darling, I never showed you. I assumed you'd always be there, and I took your presence for granted, but I always cared. Still that we like so many friends we've lost along the way, and I know together once the sun will never shine the same. I'll always love to brighten a day. Yeah.
Lord, I know when I lay down to sleep, you will always listen as I pray. Shining down on me from heaven, like so many summers along the way, and I know eventually we'll be together once we